Welcome to the Echoes, a Notre Dame podcast. Mike Golic Jr., Jessica Smetana. As always, thank you to everyone who's downloaded, subscribed, rated, and reviewed. Continue to do it because we come bearing the good news today. Our rundown on fire on the side of the road. Will we ever get to talk about Emil Wagner, Billy Schrauth, the Notre Dame players declaring for the NFL and heading towards the portal? We may never know because, Jess, before we get to remnants of the Notre Dame USC arguments from last week, before we get to bowl season, which is still happening, despite those saying Notre Dame has killed it, we come bearing the good news today. A tweet from our Lord and Savior, Marcus Freeman. Reads simply, 2026, run it back. Go Irish, with a shamrock emoji. Woo! Let's go. Marcus Freeman is back at Notre Dame this year. This tweet also comes with a good bit of reporting from plenty of people. Ross Dellinger over at Yahoo and Pat Forty over at SI, who said that Notre Dame and Marcus Freeman going and making it official. Notre Dame apparently confirmed, this according to Pat Forty, that Marcus Freeman has agreed to a restructured contract. The terms of the deal not disclosed, but compensation in, quote, the top tier of college coaches. Remember, last year signed the 6-year contract extension. This revised agreement adds one more year to the end, extending him to 2031. So just the fear over the looming threat of NFL jobs come open. The New York Giants, who we know had been publicly talked about with Marcus Freeman. The Tennessee Titans, one of the other open jobs. The very real fear that was starting to mount given what happened this weekend for your beloved Pittsburgh Steelers. All of it led to a lot of anxiety for me and everyone else. Jess, how are you feeling now that we finally have the news?
Okay, so I feel pretty reassured. I didn't think he was going to leave this year, Mike, but I was waiting for the announcement. I thought until the announcement happens, until there's a tweet or a revised contract, I'm not going to feel 100% sure. But I was like in the 90s realm. And then Saturday happened and the Steelers lost to the Browns. And then I dipped slightly below 90. But I thought, for all the reasons we talked about last week, I thought Marcus Freeman would be back for 2026. I thought that this would be a really crazy time to leave what he has built at Notre Dame. So I feel good about it. From your reaction here, I'm getting the sense that you were 50-50 or below on this one. So you look like you feel pretty good right now.
I just, I get nervous because I understand what's at play here. Like the forces at play of having a coach that's incredibly desirable, that's always going to make this a bit uncomfortable, but also the fact that the NFL is just a different animal, right? Like I can feel very confident with Notre Dame now as positioned to other jobs in college football and coming off the Brian Kelly departure for a lot of Notre Dame fans. I'm sure there was a good degree of anxiety surrounding that, but it now seems that in this era of college football, Notre Dame has positioned itself well. The NFL is hard to compare to, so I was always nervous. And to your point about the Steelers, the idea that there's a world where I could connect all this back to that freaking Detroit Lions fan who got DK Metcalf suspended for 2 games that ended up with them losing to the Browns in a way that could, in theory, cost Mike Tomlin his job was just more than I could stomach after seeing it tweeted about with that press conference from that weirdo this weekend. Yeah, so that was what started to eat at my psyche a little bit.
No. You're completely spot on with that one. Yeah, I think that there's a lot of desirable NFL jobs out there. In fact, you could say any NFL job, you can make an argument, is more desirable than a college football job. I think Marcus Freeman has one of the best college football jobs and has earned a level of job security where clearly he is going to be taken care of at Notre Dame. And like you said, with Brian Kelly leaving, completely different scenarios, but would have been bad timing for Notre Dame, would have been bad for the players that Notre Dame has been negotiating with in this weird portal re-signing period now in college football, would have been hard for the staff, would have been just calamitous, I think, for all parties involved except Marcus Freeman moving forward. So for all of those reasons, I'm glad that this has officially been, we can stop talking about those rumors, which, like I said, I believe they were legit. I think that when you hear that I saw someone in our comments last week was like, why do you think that he's interested in the NFL? Well, one reason is because any power job that's come open this year, we have seen reporting that he's not interested in it. So he has to be interested in something. And it sounds like going back to as far as last year, he was curious about, the Chicago Bears job, and now this year with the Giants. And it sounds like probably the Titans were the other team that he said this morning, the morning that we're recording this, that he's staying at Notre Dame. So anyways, all that is to say, happy that this is official. I think the timing would have been tough for Notre Dame. I think if he wants to do this next year or the year after or the year after that, as long as he's doing well at Notre Dame, it seems like the interest will be there. And so this works out for both parties and at least at this point in time.
Well, and like you said, Jess, there's what felt like the biggest shame in all this would have been is the opportunity that is there next year for everyone that sees with the roster, with the way this come together, the fact that CJ Carr is returning as a starter, something Marcus hasn't had in his time at South Bend as the head coach. And so all these things lining up in a way that just needed that final and most important piece right on the precipice of portal season. Like, we're recording this on the 29th. The portal opens the beginning of January. Notre Dame has right now had some players enter the portal, but a lot of them are names you'd expect at positions that are deep where, you understand, Carson Hobbs being one of the most recent examples of a guy that was playing early, lost out on playing time, is in a deep, talented room in the secondary room, and now is going to be gone. But Notre Dame, in terms of what they've done well, all that kind of hinged on this. So I am relieved in that way. What this is interesting, I think, as a thought exercise for, though, is what you just mentioned. This isn't going to go away, provided Marcus continues to be incredibly successful at Notre Dame. And should one of those jobs come along, like, my biggest fear in all this was, if this happens now, much more in line with when the NFL's hiring cycles go than when college hiring cycles go. We already talked about the calendar issue for college jobs. This would be calamitous. Like, this is what Michigan was staring down before, the inexplicable Hail Mary of Kyle Whittingham stepping down from Utah and taking that job at the umpteenth hour. They were staring into the abyss where, like, Biff Poggi, no disrespect to him, was looking like a realistic option to try and hold things together. And so I do wonder if for Notre Dame, for Pete Bavacqua, you've got to give some mental energy to how would we approach this if and when this does happen eventually? Because in this day and age, you can't afford to be caught unaware and off guard going into a season where your roster could be drained of talent instantly if you're not prepared.
Right. That's the biggest difference between 2021 and now is when Brian Kelly left, it was still that early December time period where there were coaching candidates out there, like the Luke Fickles of the world, who you probably would have had to wait for Cincinnati to finish their playoff run to hire him. But there were people out there that that's an interesting sliding doors. You're talking about sliding doors college football moments. Notre Dame beats Cincinnati in 2021 and makes it to the playoff and is undefeated, and Cincinnati's out of the playoff. Does Kelly leave for LSU, or does Marcus Freeman end up at Notre Dame? Probably not. Anyways, yeah, it's just, it would have been really tough. And we saw it last year with Notre Dame making the deep playoff run and then being out of a defensive coordinator late in January. The options that you're left with a lot of the times are not probably the first and second options that you really want. And so they kind of went deep into the bag and made a hire that was pretty unexpected. And that's kind of what you have to do. I mean, Ohio State hired Matt Patricia, who I did not expect them to hire last year either, after their defensive coordinator left for Penn State. So yeah, these are the kinds of things that when you're talking about like the NFL, college football, even like the late college football playoff time frame now, it does put you at a disadvantage to make decisions later in the year. And it would have been totally different than 2021, Mike, and I think would have been really difficult for Notre Dame. But luckily, from the way that it sounds like things have been operating the last few weeks, I don't know how legitimate of a threat it really was. Like hearing reports from John Bryce that Al Washington turned down BC defensive coordinator job, I believe it was, hearing the reporting on like the contract negotiations with the CJ Carrs and the Leonard Moores and all of the stuff happening with the portal and players leaving and players deciding they're not leaving. It just didn't seem like the way things were going, the way it sounded like the program was operating, I would have been really, really surprised. But it doesn't matter because you never really know. And now we do ultimately know.
Yep. And so now, and I think this is probably a good reminder, like in so many ways now, the sport seems like a series of one-year deals, whether it's the players, the coaches, or everyone involved. And so I do think this is a reminder, like, hey, we got to stay in the moment. Notre Dame is a great opportunity in 2026 to make something happen. We don't know what is promised beyond that now, but at the very least, like the contract is in place. All of this reporting is great news, and I can ease the tension in my shoulders.
Take a deep breath, inhale. Exhale. Hey, after someone commented on our video last week and said this was the worst Notre Dame offseason of his lifetime, I would put this not even in like the top 5. I don't think it's been that bad. I do think if Marcus Freeman left, I would be like, okay, yeah, I'll give it to you. This like missing the playoffs and opting out of the bowl and like the head coach leaving, I would give that to you. But there's been some, I mean, we don't need to talk about 2012, which started with the national championship game, led to a Deadspin article, and then ended in Everett Golson being suspended for an entire season. I would say that's probably one of the worst off seasons, but there's been some pretty bad ones in our lifetime. So I would not put this one up there.
Boy, it just shows how far Notre Dame has come as a program. Like, I went through an offseason where we fired our head coach. We did that all the time when I was growing up. Being that bad is far worse than the rich person tax bracket problems that you just described and that we've had over the recent half decade. So, yeah, like if Marcus had left, absolutely. Like that would have been devastating in ways that are hard to quantify given where Notre Dame is now arrived at the sport. But again, coming off an offseason where Notre Dame was, like a bunch of like the bad PR after the opt-out. Like that is what it is.
Just get off Twitter. It's fine. That's not a big deal. Like
that's who Notre Dame's been my entire life.
Oh
like
my God, people are dunking on Notre Dame on social media. Like that's never happened before.
Yeah, like people just, I think everyone kind of forgot, right? Marcus Freeman came in, everybody liked him. He's handsome, he's nice. The team was winning and continuing to do well coming off the end of the Brian Kelly era. And so people out there were like, oh, maybe I like non-Notre Dame fans. Like maybe I like Notre Dame now. And the fact that that's changed back, like, brother, I was born in the dark, molded by it. This is where we've been my entire Notre Dame watching life. If this offends you, that might just mean you're a little young and you don't understand like where we've been before. So this offseason, we signed the best recruiting class in the modern era for Notre Dame. We're coming off a season where on the field, everyone was aghast that this team that most considered a top 5 team in the sport on the field was left out of the playoff. Like we're sitting all right in the grand scheme of things if you're looking at Notre Dame's situation right now.
Right. And just to go back to Marcus Freeman, he's made it that way, right? Like he's done a lot of this work and with help from the administration for sure. It sounds like things have gotten there's the word that Pete Bavacqua uses is alignment. There's like so much alignment between administration and football now, which as we know, Mike, hasn't always been there, especially in our childhoods, when things seemed pretty unaligned at times. But I think he is also through his coaching, through his hiring, through his recruiting, through all the things that he's put into the program has made it a place where it is very competitive to an NFL offer and a place where he's now going to get paid a lot of money to stay and a place where fans would actually be sad to see the head coach lose. Because I wouldn't say 2021 anyone was sad. Maybe they felt wronged, but there was also an element of like, all right, have fun at LSU. We'll see how that goes. So yeah, Mike, I think we're in a different place than we were 4 years ago and for the better. And now we get to see what it's like having a quarterback come back for a second year starting at Notre Dame, which we haven't seen since Ian Book came back for the 2020 season. We get to see what the stacking of talent looks like on this roster that Marcus Freeman has built, that he's really put a lot of his identity into as a coach. And we get to see what the future looks like without USC on the schedule. If I'm reading this correctly, Mike, the extension now goes till 2031. So maybe Marcus Freeman will still be the head coach in 2031 when we finally do schedule USC again. That would be kind of interesting, wouldn't it?
It'd be really nice if that was still the case. Coming off multiple national championships, getting ready to erect this statue outside of the stadium. It's all on the table because Marcus Freeman is officially back. Congratulations to Coach, his family, to Notre Dame for putting the last piece in place on an offseason that does seem like it is building towards something that's incredibly special. And there's a lot of pressure that comes with that, but that pressure is the privilege of, like you said, Marcus does, we don't have to do the full retrospective on Marcus. We've talked a lot about it, but walking into what he did with the lack of a head coaching experience that he had at the time in the sport's history when he has, and a new athletic director in Pete Bavacqua, like all these things to shake up that cocktail and have this be the result on the other side is a pretty ringing endorsement for everyone involved and how they've navigated the change in the sport. So, a happy day here that we will all stop.
I think, Mike, finally we can, after this next segment where we talk about the Pop-Tarts Bowl and some of the scheduling stuff from last week, finally we can put 2025 in the past We can move on. It's a new year, New Year's Eve in a couple nights here. Let's all move forward. He couldn't have said it better. 2026, let's run it back. Let's move into the new year and put some of the discourse behind us after the next segment.
Yes, exactly. So
that we already recorded.
That we already recorded, had to go back and do now because this news broke in the middle, and that's the life of a showgirl, babe. So yes, you are absolutely right. Full steam ahead as Marcus Freeman now points us towards our future. We can let go of our past after we know on a little bit more of it. We'll take a break and come back here on the Echoes.
College football not feeling as juicy as it once did? Let me put you onto something that'll shake up your Saturday and every other day of the week.
Because now that Wendy's has crispy chicken tendies and a powerhouse lineup of new sauces, it's time you transfer to the hottest team in the league.
That's right, Team Tendies. Wendy's Tendies. They're making their undeniable rookie season one for the books. Enjoy first-string flavor from some 5-star recruits. Rep your new favorite team everywhere you go, but make sure to cheer with your mouth closed.
Take it to the end zone of savory sauces like honey barbecue, creamy ranch, and the new Wendy's signature sauce to experience a total taste bud blitz of flavor. It's time to join a team that won't upset you with an upset.
Taste the phenom that's gracing the gridiron with its juicy, crispy, and tendery tendencies. Don't fumble the bag. Commit to Team Tendies and call the most delicious plays in the playbook.
All right, huddle up, guys. Tendies on 3. Tendies on 3. 1, 2, 3, Tendies. Let's do this. Wendy's Chicken Tendies, now at participating U.S. Wendy's. Bowl season has still happened. Jess, despite the tales of its demise at the hands of bloodthirsty Notre Dame, bowl season did happen over the weekend. I was down at the Pop-Tarts Bowl in Orlando, the bowl game that Notre Dame would have probably played in had they accepted the bid. BYU and Georgia Tech instead gave us a barn burner there. You were busy poisoning your loved ones with a special Malört hot chocolate dish that you got from the Bears. How'd that go for you this weekend? I think everyone's waiting on bated breath after you decided to throw that out there in Pub Malört.
I have a really shocking revelation that I need to discuss with you, Mike. I think Malört got better. I made the hot chocolate Malört amaretto salted caramel marshmallow thing for my family, and everyone's initial reaction upon tasting it was, this is really good. And then later in the night, we were playing drinking games, of course. And one of the rules, if you messed up or like dropped something on the floor, was you had to take a shot of Malört. So I took a shot of Malört with 2 of my younger cousins, and I was ready. I mean, the camera phones were out because it was like their first time trying it, and to get the reaction. And I was ready to make the classic Malört face, which is like, you know, the face of like those gargoyles on like the Cathedral of Notre Dame where they're just like in pain and they're crying. But no, it never came. It went down pretty smooth. And that's when I posted about it on Blue Sky. And a lot of the replies from seasoned Malört drinkers was that apparently Malört has been acquired by another company in the last few years, and their quality control has gotten better and it tastes better now. And I have not fact checked any of this. So if you know anything about the quality of Malört and the taste of Malört, and specifically how it may or may not have changed over the last 5 years, please let us know in the comments. But it went down really smoothly. It was not at all as bad as I was expecting. I would have perhaps even gone back for more. It was pretty shocking. It was a crazy revelation. It totally threw me for a loop, rocked my world. It was bizarre. Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, I don't love that. Like, maybe this is just me becoming that like millennial TikTok that just talks down to the next generations about how things were.
Yeah,
but,
right.
Like, Malört is supposed to be bad. Four Locos is supposed to potentially put your life in danger. And the fact that we've changed these formulas for all these things to make them more tolerable, while probably better for society, does feel like we're continuing to lose recipes of the time where I was most comfortable, which definitely is just me getting old now that I say it out loud.
No, but I agree with you, because I think what makes Malört special is how disgusting it actually tastes. Like, it's been described as like drinking an ashtray with pine sol in it by a lot of people. It's got like this sort of woodsy taste to it, but also an undercurrent of despair and hopelessness. And that was just not the vibe I was getting from the shot that I took. And the hot chocolate, like I said, was great. And I figured maybe the hot chocolate was masking some of it, but then, I took the shot later in the night and I was like, no, this is actually like kind of warm feeling. So it was very strange. And again, I've done no fact checking. So I'd love to learn more about this. Perhaps a future episode will have the CEO of Malört on.
This is one area where I'm pretty comfortable with us not dealing totally in facts, but off vibes. I will say the way you describe Malört, though, and I think the way I can tie it back into all of this is Malört was one of those experiences where we all got to trauma bond over a shared pain. It's a lot like sports in that way, where most of what bonds us is actually the bad times that we have been through. And it's why people demonize bandwagon fans, even though they're probably just making better decisions for their mental
Right.
health.
True.
I did have a much more delicious, I think, dish this weekend at the Pop-Tarts Bowl. Brown sugar bourbon smash was one of the Pop-Tart cocktails at the tent at FanFest there. Pretty damn good. Getting to dunk a brown sugar cinnamon Pop-Tart into alcohol, better than I expected it would be in a sea of Pop-Tart related products down at that game. And a game where, like you said, like watching your favorite team play a close game sucks. Getting to watch two teams that I have no rooting interest in play what ended up being a pretty entertaining game down there. Pretty well-attended game. Like, it wasn't a full bowl, but the BYU squad especially, that fan base was there in full force. They were loud. It was fun in a way that probably would not have been had Notre Dame been playing a close game in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. So shout out to the People's National Championship.
I would like to think if Notre Dame was in that game, we would have seen some, hopefully, better clock management down the stretch, Mike. One of the most excruciating 2-minute drills I think I've seen this football season. And I won't limit this just to Brent Key and Georgia Tech in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. There was bad clock management across a lot of the bowl games I watched this past weekend, but especially watching the fourth quarter of that game, I was like, do they think there's a fifth quarter? Are they playing to set themselves up to score at the beginning of the next quarter? Because it was a little tough to watch that. But we'll never know. Marcus Freeman never had the chance to show us this year that he has fully mastered the clock. Just kidding. He's already done that, Mike. But did your opinion of Notre Dame opting out of the bowl game change being at the Pop-Tarts Bowl, or were you like, this is cool, we didn't need to do all that?
My experience with that is I didn't think about Notre Dame when I was down there. Like,
you're the only one.
I was asked by plenty of people about that, being the Notre Dame guy in representing there. But my thought about all of that was, for the detractors and the people that had things to say about Notre Dame, like, you got what you apparently claimed to want, Notre Dame not being around in the conversation anymore. And yet a lot of people wanted to put them back. Like, I went there to enjoy the game. It was a great time. Like, the Florida Citrus Sports Group put on an awesome show down there. They do a great job with that in the Citrus Bowl. It was fun. It was as delicious as I had hoped for. I got to eat the giant Pop-Tart on the field at the end that Marcus and the team would have had if they had won that game. And it was great. It was one of the sweetest things I've ever like, so sweet that your teeth almost start to hurt immediately on contact, which for me is Valhalla. Like, I had arrived.
That's where you
Nirvana.
Like to be. Yeah,
that's where I live. But like, I got to do all that, and never once was I like, oh man, I wish. I was like, oh no, I'm glad I was here. We can still enjoy bowl season, because despite tales of its demise, it still seemed like, and I'm sure the ratings will bear this out. I know ESPN had a bunch of, press they put out last year about the non-CFP bowl games and how well some of them did. Like, it seems like it's going to be variable year to year, Jess, because every team's going to be in a different position relative to a lot of what happens around the changing landscape of the sport. And that's going to affect their willingness to show up to these games, what version of the team show up in these games. Like, the fact that for both of these teams, you had Haynes King finishing up his career at Georgia Tech and in college, going out one more time. You had Bear Bachmeier, who is an ascending player in college football, but is going to be around coming off a freshman campaign that got better and better as it went along. Like, you had all of the ingredients that were going to make this an incredibly competitive and compelling game. And lo and behold, that's what we got. And I think that's kind of going to be the case going forward for bowl season. Is it'll be dependent. It might shrink or grow depending on the year and what amount of teams are going to be available. And that's kind of been the history of bowl season in general. There's never been like a set number of games we have to have. And so I do think I came away going, all right, everything's still kind of all right. Like, the sky didn't feel like it was falling in Orlando.
I think you just kind of have to accept bowl season for what it is right now. Like, it's the games, some of them, there's some duds. Some of them are fun. Sometimes you'll get a big upset. They don't really change the way I feel about the teams participating in them for the most part. Like, I didn't like change my opinion of Pat Narduzzi and Pitt football after they lost to East Carolina this weekend. I thought it was a great win for East Carolina, but I didn't change my mind about Missouri or Virginia. Like, I thought Virginia had a great regular season. I already knew that going into the postseason. I thought Missouri had, struggled against good teams all year. I knew that going into the postseason too. It doesn't really like change my opinion of anyone or anything. I think they're just fun and entertaining, and that's what they should be. And so I'm with you. Just like let the games wash over you. Have a nice time watching them. It's great television. I think as we're recording this Monday morning, there is currently a bowl game about to kick off, and that's what's great. Is this like weird nebulous period between Christmas and New Year's where a lot of people either have less work or can watch TV while they work, and you get a bowl game on at 2:00, and just enjoy it, have fun, let it mean nothing, and you'll have even more fun. And that's kind of where I was at with the games this weekend, and juxtaposed with the NFL games that were on this weekend, which were like, we're coming down to the wire right now in NFL season. Every single game, for the most part, even the Raiders Giants game has huge implications on what's going to happen next. Those games, if you want to watch games with stakes, they're still there for you. And we've got 4 playoff games coming up later this week. But the bowl games do not have to be an indictment on your season or on the sport itself. Like, they can just be fun extra games that we get at the end of the year, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. And it's kind of like the opening weekend of March Madness. Like, you're buying in bulk. That's part of what you get with college sports, is at times the ability to buy in bulk, to have a lot of stuff. And maybe the quality of each individual game isn't the Pop-Tarts Bowl where, hey, you get 2 teams coming off good seasons. Hey, you get a great game, but you've got so many of them that it can kind of fill that gap. It's like having the Christmas Story on for 24 hours. I never watch it all the way through, but I'll parachute in for parts because I like to see it. Eventually, I'll build it in the aggregate. So
right. And then you get the Super Bowl, which is Muppets Christmas Carol, which you do watch all the way through and never skip any parts of. So I'm with you, Mike. And I think we'll talk a little bit more about the quarterfinal games later on in the show, but wanted to put a pin on some of the bowl discourse that has been swirling around, much like a brown cinnamon Pop-Tart swirling around in your mouth after the Pop-Tarts Bowl game.
It was so good. They had Pop-Tart banana pudding, Pop-Tart ice cream sundaes, Pop-Tart cocktails, Pop-Tart nachos. It was really an event straight out of my brain. Like, never have I been more spiritually aligned with an event that's existed in my entire life. And of course, we had the escape of one of the mascots who, defected at the last second. So somewhere out there, Protein Slam and Strawberry is still at large. If you see something, say something and let the people at the Pop-Tarts Bowl know.
Great. That's a great way to close the loop on the bowl opt-out situation, Mike, and move on towards something that we talked about last week. As we were recording, we got news that the USC Notre Dame series was on hiatus. We reacted to it last week. So if you want to hear our instant reaction, you should check that episode out. But after we finished recording, there was some additional reporting or reports that came out. We got cited in the LA Times last week, the Echoes podcast, because of our interview with Pete Bavacqua and his quotes about being hopeful that both sides were going to come to an extension agreement with it as it pertains to the series moving forward next year. So cool for us, the Echoes making news, Mike. But one of the things that came out last week that you and I both were texting each other about, mostly Tuesday, the day our podcast came out, was this conversation around the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding, that we talked to Pete Bavacqua about a couple of weeks ago now. And from the LA Times and Yahoo, it sounded like that was a big factor in USC spiking the extension, and they either weren't aware of the implications of the MOU or didn't know about it at all. And that's where things got a little fuzzy for us, I think. But what was your initial reaction hearing that spin put on the spiking of the 2-year extension that we talked about 3 weeks ago with Pete Bavacqua?
Yeah, a 2-year extension that would have kept the game in the same time, right? Like, that was also something
the
that
November,
was a contention
October,
about this, going back to the summer. So, yeah, it was interesting. And in all the reporting that came out about that, treating it like it was something new. And now a lot of the conversation had seemingly treated it like that, especially when Pete first brought it up on Dan Patrick and then on our show, forgetting that this had been pretty widely reported on and talked about going back to November of 2024. You had sent me, because we were talking about it, the Ross Dellinger report, talking about this very publicly. And I remember being on air and talking about that. As everything was changing with the college football playoff, there were 3 main bullet points, and that was really one of them that got brought up at the time. And listen, Jess, you could absolutely sell me, right? that we've seen throughout this process of the college football playoff. Rules and things change at a time where change has been rampant that had unintended consequences that people weren't necessarily ready for or didn't understand the full extent of. You could sell me on that. But you cannot sell me on the idea that they did not know that this was a thing or a surprise. It's one thing for some of our peers in sports media or other people around there, like you're trying to juggle a lot of things. You're figuring out what's most pertinent and important to you.
Yeah,
or fans. Like there's a lot. Like I am certainly empathetic to that. But for the administrations at these schools, whose sole job it is to take in information, try and figure out how it best situates you. I mean, the core of the USC defense of all of this is them taking in new information about the changing landscape of the sport and trying to build a reality that best positions them inside that. You can't claim to not know then. It's your job to know, and that's the part where I think this falls short for me, and that is a defense or any sort of like reported idea that they didn't know and were truly blindsided by this, and that was the reason they folded up shop.
Right. It's being almost treated like it was some secretive under the table handshake agreement that people just became aware of 2 weeks ago. And so the 2-year extension was then off the table because USC realized this would put us at a competitive disadvantage. Where Nicole Auerbach reported last week that this was part of the information that all the teams were given in March 2024 after this playoff format was decided. And the playoff format was decided among the conference commissioners and Pete Bavacqua included. It was something that was not like it was almost implied that like Pete Bavacqua like slid it in and like the Big Ten didn't know about it, and then by extension USC didn't know about it. When in fact it sounds like the schools did know about it. Maybe they forgot about it or didn't really understand what it meant. But like you said, that's their jobs. And from my understanding, like this was how they were able to get Notre Dame to agree to hand over the playoffs to, the Big Ten and the SEC. They needed to throw that in there. And there's also the aspect of it where it's like so much of the macro conversation about the college football playoff this year has been like the 12 best teams should be in. And then it's like, okay, if Notre Dame's in the top 12, they'll be in. And it's like, well, not like that.
We didn't mean you guys.
Which is very funny to me. It's not like the top 12 teams will get in, and if Notre Dame's ranked 13th, they'll jump the 12th team. It's like they still have to be ranked in the top 12 to make the top 12 playoff, or 14th if it's a 14-team playoff. So that aspect of it, I do think is a little bit funny.
Well, and like the fact that, like you just said, the larger reason this all happened is because everyone was forced to cede power of decision-making for the sports postseason to 2 conferences. Because if not, like you want to talk about taking your ball and going home, it's the looming threat that the Big Ten and the SEC would just go F off and do this themselves. So like all of this, like again,
which I think would be worse for the sport than Notre Dame being independent. But that's
but I think that's the point, right? Is Notre Dame's independence makes them different and an easy target when these things come up around the changes of the sport, whether it's bowl season and all this stuff. But this is all couched in a larger sea of change where Notre Dame is really more floating along with everybody else than dictating the terms at the level that we're talking about with the Big Ten and the SEC. So listen, again, like this is one of the things that people in conferences always seem to tout is how much better, it is being in a conference or anything like that. And then here now, like, are you insinuating that they made these decisions without you knowing? Like, I don't.
It's crazy. Mike, it's like join a conference. However, your conference commissioner may change the playoff format and not tell you about it. Like, that's what I'm supposed to believe from like this side of the argument. So you tried to get a little bit more like information from Dan Woken, who's one of the people who was posting about the MOU thing. And so I want to read what he said to you on Twitter last week. You sent a message that said, maybe I've missed it, but what's the explanation for this being something reported on very publicly last year at this time? And he said, that's not exactly correct. In March 2024, the negotiations that led to the MOU were the first step that gave the SEC Big Ten authority over future format. Parentheses, which still hasn't been decided, obviously. The various line item protections got almost no attention at the time because it did not seem on the surface like much had really changed, and there were still a lot of steps before the format was decided. You can go read all those stories and see the stuff about protections is just sort of buried as a throwaway line because all the focus was on future playoff size. I don't think very many people understood or even considered the idea Notre Dame could displace a power conference team ranked higher than them in the at-large pool. I can't recall anyone ever mentioning it until selection day. Can you? And then you responded again, and then he basically made your point about like this is kind of like athletic administrators' jobs to understand how this works.
Yep.
And then he basically said, like, this is now that there's been a couple years of the 12-team playoff selection committee, it made it more real to them, I guess, that this is how it would happen. So maybe they did know about it, but they didn't understand it. It's the whole exchange to me just made it more confusing that, like, it's harder for me to believe that side of it when USC and Lincoln Riley have been signaling for well over a year that they don't want to play Notre Dame as an out-of-conference team anymore because they want to schedule the way Alabama's scheduled to win national championship games. They've tried to get out of other non-conference games. I remember a whole story about them trying to get out of the LSU game last year. So this is where I'm just like, okay, sure, you could take me down this long rabbit hole about the MOU and the College Football Playoff Selection Committee and some like crazy scenario where Notre Dame beats USC and USC the head-to-head scenario that he was posting about, which like we just saw Notre Dame get left out of the playoff to a team that beat them and to a power conference team with 3 losses that had 9 FBS wins in their season, Mike. And I'm supposed to believe that Notre Dame's going to be ranked inside the top 12 so they get special treatment moving forward. I just can't believe all that. What I can believe is USC just wants to make their non-conference schedule a little bit easier. And if that's the reason, then like that's fine. Like, but let's just be real for a second that that's what's going on.
Right. Yeah, the situation was 9-2. USC beats 10-1 Notre Dame in the last game of 2026. Both are 10-2. The committee ranks USC 11th, Notre Dame 12th due to head-to-head. And yet with the MOU, ND jumps USC to get the last playoff spot, assuming the G5 is still getting a spot, which is a bold assumption going forward, considering what we know about this sport. Oh, by the way. And so, yeah, Jess, I'm with you. I think the committee showed us, hey, head-to-head is something they are very serious about protecting, even if it makes them look silly based on the way they've logically set all this up. So you're right. Ultimately, I think what a lot of this boils down to, and quite honestly, the strong reaction from the USC crowd was them being called cowards all summer.
Yeah.
Like, no one likes being called a coward. And in this situation, like, listen, while I don't like it, that's part of like rivalry stuff. Like, seeing all this play out and the way everyone responded made me miss the rivalry already because everyone hates each other. Like, this is what college sports is supposed to be. Like, the reality of the situation, if I could say it there, is like, hey, both sides are trying to make the decision that's best for them. Notre Dame's schedules, we know, are front-loaded with teams they've locked games with at the beginning of the season for all the reasons that we know about that. And so adding USC in week 0, because that was the other thing that I heard a lot from USC fans was, oh, well, we offered to play you in week 0. You guys said no to that. So really, you're running scared and killed the rivalry. So you wanted it on your terms. Notre Dame wanted it on their terms. Both sides dug their heels in on that. Like, to hold that up as some sort of point of moral superiority is a level of grasping at straws that's insane to me.
I was reading NCAA bylaws about week 0 exemptions late into the wee hours last week to see if there was even a way these two teams could play in week 0, which seems difficult to do. There's a Hawaii exemption. There's an international travel exemption. Notre Dame has played internationally 3 years ago, so I don't think they can play internationally again until next season. And then like, okay, so they're just going to schedule an international game at the last minute in 2027 so they can play in week 0. Like, that whole side of it, I'm sure there's maybe ways that could be done.
And I think there's also this like larger push in the sport to move everything back to week 0 anyway, to make that a date
which hasn't happened yet. I mean,
maybe
there would be an exemption, but like right now that doesn't seem like something that is on the table. So
I guess
I don't know how real that is.
Like, even ignoring the reality, like, let's say, like, hey, Notre Dame and USC are so important that the NCAA, who at this point is toothless on so many levels, would write them the exemption. To act like, oh, because you wouldn't do it our way, the way we offered, you're now scared. And using Marcus Freeman's words of anytime, any place, anywhere, as if he was the one ultimately making the decision. And I know this is maybe where I differ from a lot of Notre Dame fans. Like, I never spent time taking Lincoln Riley to task. I have seen a lot of USC alums, for what it's worth, do that to him in the current administration. But ultimately, I understand, hey, whatever Lincoln Riley's saying publicly, like, he doesn't have any sway on what's going to happen with this game. That decision is made above his pay grade, just the same way it's made above Marcus Freeman's pay grade. So to throw that in there as some sort of logical inconsistency, to me, ignores the reality of that situation, but also, again, positions it as, well, you didn't take our way, and so you're running from this, as opposed to, no, we just both saw this in a different way, dug our heels in, and there was an impasse. And, oh, by the way, Jess, like, I think lost in all of this, Notre Dame and USC put out the statement together when this was finally announced. I don't think that's nothing in terms of where this goes forward. Like, if this was really something that ended with so much animus that 2030 was going to be a near impossibility in discussing, I do think they probably would have put out separate statements and immediately began the positioning. And maybe that happened behind the scenes with the way the reporting worked on all this. But I do think them offering a joint statement to me is an admission that, hey, this is something we want to pick back up in 2030 meaningfully and figure out a way to do it.
Yeah, I am hopeful that that's the case. I still feel like even if that is the case, it's a shame it's not going to be played the next 4 seasons, Mike. But yeah, anyways, we'll take a quick break here. Welcome back to the Echoes. We're going to wrap things up here with a little bit of NFL Notre Dame talk. We're going to push our ND 2026 roster talk to next week once again because the portal opens Friday, Mike, and we ran out of time because we've had breaking news now 2 Mondays in a row. So we'll do that next week. We'll talk about some Notre Dame NFL stuff. We'll mention the playoff quarterfinals that are coming up this week and the canceled Christmas for the Notre Dame men's basketball team here at the end. But let's start with the Saints game yesterday, Sunday. Did you see Audric Estime and Kevin Austin score touchdowns and get game balls in the Saints game?
I did. Very happy for those guys, especially Audric, who obviously the start of his NFL career has not gone anywhere like what I expected for one of the better running backs in recent Notre Dame history. And so glad he's getting another opportunity and already making the most of it.
It was a great run, too. I don't know how he did it. He looked like he was going to get tackled for a loss. And he reminded me of the end of the Duke game when it looked like Notre Dame was setting up for a field goal. And then he accidentally scored a touchdown and they won, which was great. Much needed. We also have how many Notre Dame Pro Bowlers this year? 5. Brandon Aubrey, of course, being the greatest Notre Dame greatest Notre Dame grad to ever play football in the NFL, made it onto the Pro Bowl. Yes. Joe Alt, who played only half the season, I want to say, for the Chargers, had a couple injuries this year. Do you think that's weird?
A little while. And let's put it this way. Joe was playing at a Pro Bowl level without question. He was playing at a level that was going to make the Chargers wonder if they were going to have to move the left tackle that they paid a second contract over to right tackle because Joe was so good. But yes, with that few games, it was a little while. But either way, he is a Pro Bowl caliber player, so we'll let it slide.
And Quentin Nelson, of course, Ben Skoranek, who plays for the Steelers, has been doing a wonderful job with them this year. And, of course, Kyle Hamilton. Mike, if you want to watch Kyle Hamilton play against Ben Skoranek, Sunday Night Football this upcoming weekend is a playoff eliminator game that I'm so stoked to watch the Steelers lose their 3rd Sunday Night Football game of the season in. And now knowing it won't necessarily affect the head coach of the Notre Dame football team, will be a lot easier to stomach a loss in that one. But we do have 4 college football games coming up. I know some Notre Dame fans are boycotting the playoffs this year. Some of them are hate watching it. I'm somewhere in the middle, but I'm excited to watch these games. The Cotton Bowl, New Year's Eve against Ohio State against Miami. 10-point spread in this one, which feels a little big. I don't know if you have thoughts on that. It feels like 10 is a lot, right?
I was a bit surprised, but I know a lot of odds makers have, even after the loss in the Big Ten championship, have Ohio State as the favorite to win the entire thing. So I do think this is a statement about that roster and how talented they are overall, kind of like Notre Dame, like one of the, I think, 3 programs that had 2 unanimous All-Americans on their team, one on each side of the ball in the case of Ohio State. But I am a little surprised after Miami's win in the first round that number didn't come down at all or anything like that during the week. I do think there are some challenges that defense presents if Miami's got to air it out more with Carson Beck than they did on a very windy day in College Station.
Totally. I think that Miami was successful in turning the Texas A&M game into a bit more of a rock fight. And I don't know. I think it'll be interesting to see if they're able to limit Beck's mistakes if Ohio State does effectively shut down that run game a little bit more. The Orange Bowl is the one that I think I'm the most excited for. The Oregon-Texas Tech game, it has the closest spread. That's not necessarily why I'm excited for it. I'm excited for it because it's just we haven't seen a ton of Big 12 out of conference games against teams of the caliber of Oregon this year, unless I'm forgetting any. This is going to be a really interesting intra-conference matchup this weekend. So Oregon is favored by only 2.5 points. Joey McGuire's obviously had a lot of things to say about Notre Dame. If Notre Dame were in a conference, they would be in the playoff. I still don't really understand that thought process. Vanderbilt also 10-2 in a conference, did not make the playoff.
BYU, I just watched them in the Pop-Tart Bowl.
Famously not in the playoff this year either. So I'm not exactly sure which conference Notre Dame's in. The ACC champion, not in the playoff. The ACC runner-up, not in the playoff. I don't know which conference Notre Dame's hypothetically in this situation, but alas, I think a lot of Notre Dame fans will be hate watching that one. Do you have
I do think that is the most interesting game for all the reasons that you just mentioned. And because both of these teams, like Oregon this year, is a roster that we know is insanely talented, but I don't think anyone thinks, especially relative to their schedule, has maxed it out yet. Like the performance against James Madison looked great, but that was a complete athletic mismatch across the board in a way that I don't also do any of the worrying. Like I know Oregon fans, some of them were worried about them letting their foot off the gas and JMU putting up a bunch of points. Like they didn't care in the second half of that game. When it was in balance, they were absolutely.
Well, it's like the end of the
them.
Stanford game. It's like, okay, well, this gives you something to be upset about if you need that like extra bit of motivation, but you knew you were going to win that one.
Yeah, but I want to see Dante Moore against the Texas Tech defense.
Exactly.
I still have major questions about the Texas Tech offense against a team that's much more able to go blow for blow with them, because that offense has struggled in the red zone, has benefited from a bunch of turnovers from that defense, whether it's turnovers on downs or actual takeaways. But defensively, Oregon's offensive line was one of the Joe Moore Award finalists and was very close to winning that thing. Their quarterback is bantered about as one that could be in conversation, potentially even for the first pick. Like I do think if Dante Moore declares, we'll go through the spring and there'll be much more of a debate about him and Fernando Mendoza and who goes number one overall. So seeing those guys against which on their best day is at the very least like potentially the best front seven in college football, but in the conversation with Ohio State, Miami, Indiana, like all those great teams, they are every bit their equal in a way that's going to be really entertaining.
Absolutely. I'm really excited for that. I'm excited for the Texas Tech D-line, Oregon offensive line matchup, like you mentioned, but I'm also excited to see Oregon's defense against this Texas Tech offense, which I did not think was like super inspiring during the Big 12 championship game. So I am curious to see how that one shakes out. And then, of course, we get the Rose Bowl, Indiana and Alabama. Never thought I'd see Indiana favored a touchdown against Alabama in my lifetime, and yet here we are. It's going to be like nasty in LA apparently on New Year's Day, Mike.
It's going to be so gross out here at the Rose Bowl.
Yeah, all of my Indiana grad friends, of which I have many, are going. My best friend had to order an Indiana sweatshirt from Etsy because she didn't even own one, Mike, because she's never gone to an Indiana football game. And now her first one will be the Rose Bowl. How about that? Would have been cool if Notre Dame were playing against them in that one. But alas, I digress. I think Indiana's going to win. I don't know if anyone's picking the upset here because of Alabama's running struggles, especially if there's bad weather. So if there is an argument for Alabama in this one, I haven't heard a convincing one yet.
No, I would agree. Indiana, a much more complete outfit than the Oklahoma team they faced. I don't think they're going to have the same success trying to confuse the quarterback that they did against John Mateer with Fernando Mendoza, the Heisman Trophy winner. And I think on the other side, like you said, Alabama just being so one-dimensional, like they were able to get some stuff out of that against Oklahoma late, just hammering away at it. Quite honestly, not all that dissimilar to Miami, who stayed consistent and eventually broke through against Texas A&M. This Indiana defense is really good. I know they lost one of their better D linemen coming off the Big Ten championship game, which is unfortunate, but I still think there's enough under the hood there where they're just too complete a team for an Alabama team that is streaky, still talented, but I don't think on par with Indiana this year. And then the Sugar Bowl, this one too, a rematch of a game where
third rematch.
Ole Miss was winning, and then 17 unanswered by Georgia gets this done in Athens. Georgia also a touchdown favorite. Are you buying the Georgia resurgence down the back half of the season and having them? Most people seem to treat them as like the third best team in the dance.
Yeah, I think I'm buying it right now. I mean, that was a really fun game during the regular season, and like Ole Miss totally gave it away, I thought, in the fourth quarter. But I don't know. I don't know why I think this, because you could have said this last year before the Sugar Bowl and then Notre Dame beat Georgia. But like, I do think I trust Kirby in these games. This is going to be, not interim coach, because he was named the temporary permanent coach, Pete Golding, playing against Georgia and coaching in that game for the first time. So, I mean, maybe you give the slight edge to Georgia there on top of just how good they've been over the last month and a half. But yeah, I don't know. I think Georgia wins this game. I don't know. I guess I could see it being like shootouty like the last one, but I think Georgia's the better team overall and has the more experienced coach.
Yep, I would agree. And I do wonder, and I think we talked about this earlier on, like, would the subsequent weeks of the playoff after that initial wave where, all right, now you're navigating a time of year you haven't been involved in, and Pete Golding is still navigating being the head coach here, when all the routine that you had built up from the regular season that you could still largely apply to that first round game starts to give way to a time of year that's different that you have less experience with. How does that manifest versus someone who has been intimately familiar with whatever's version of the postseason model that we've had since Kirby Smart's been at the helm for Georgia?
It's also like they're playing in the Sugar Bowl the second year in a row. Like that part is familiar to them. Yeah, obviously last year was weird circumstances, but yeah, we'll see how that goes. I think to sum it all up, we're going pretty much all favorites.
Which is like a good reminder that last year, like all of the talk about like, oh, rest versus rust and all that stuff, like it was wonky playoff seeding. We've got the top 4 teams that are in the top 4 now, and I won't be surprised if they all win, despite the fact that they've been off for a little bit, getting healthy and having time to prepare.
Yeah, but we're hoping for good games regardless. Unlike the most recent Notre Dame men's basketball game, they resume play against Stanford. They got a little West Coast swing action right now in ACC play. Marcus Shrewsbury said he canceled Christmas last week, which is exactly what I wanted to hear from him, to be honest. Like normally I'd be like, wow, like that's mean. Let the team enjoy Christmas. And then they lost to Purdue Fort Wayne. And I said, you know what? No Christmas. And he agreed. So we'll see if they can pick things back up. They play Stanford, if you're listening to this, Tuesday the 30th tonight, and then Cal on Friday. Those storied ACC rivals in California. The women's team plays against Pitt as we're recording this tonight. So you probably already missed that. That's a game that they should definitely win. So hopefully they have, Mike. But I don't know. Does canceling Christmas get rectified a little bit by the in-and-out trip that the team will probably go on this West Coast swing?
Yeah, it's an important. I did love reading that this is Notre Dame's first West Coast swing since Cal and Stanford joined the conference. Like, yeah, of course. But yes, let the in-and-out fuel you. It was something we very much look forward to on the West Coast trips, whether it was Stanford or USC, even if I have come to, in my older age and living out here now, realize that it is relative to the hype, a dramatically overrated burger. It's good. No one should wait 30 minutes in line in a car for it. That's asinine.
No one should wait in line for anything. I mean, I live in New York City. We see people lined up for bagels, Mike, every day. Do you know how many bagel places don't have lines in New York City? Like, what are we doing? It's 20 degrees out. Stop waiting in line for bagels. Anyways, next week we'll be back to talk more about the 2026 roster. The portal will be open. Some of the contract this weird renegotiating period, the graphics that you're seeing on Twitter of this player re-signed at this school. We'll talk about all of that next week. We'll probably
give me the CJ Carr is the highest paid quarterback in Notre Dame history graphic.
Oh man,
hook it to my freaking neck.
We'll do all of that next week, but enjoy your New Year's, enjoy your college football quarterfinals if you are partaking in those this week, and the rest of bowl season, which has not been canceled, and enjoy yourselves. Go Irish.
Go Irish.